Hello and welcome, my name is Trismegistus. Recently I asked my viewers to ask me any questions they had about the new Space Age expansion for Factorio. This is part 2 of what is going to be a series of 3 videos answering your questions. I've done my best to make the sections clear and to highlight where there are spoilers that you may want to avoid. Let's dig in, shall we? Your questions about general mechanics, changes and improvements. John Lewis asks about supplies. Do you think it's better to bring supplies to each planet, or go with nothing and start from scratch? At the absolute minimum, you want a landing pad, the ingredients to build a silo, and the stuff to make a rocket. I'd also suggest some ways of making power, and some basic manufacturing buildings. That way, you know you can always build things on the planet, and you can always get off the planet. However, things like bots and logistics network are also going to be really useful, as well as perhaps a few of the old intermediates. And depending on where you're going, having combat supplies is probably advisable as well. A couple of questions about the Factoriopedia. One from Film Mechanic. I'm curious about Factoriopedia. Is everything visible in there from the start, or do you need to explore first? I've been planning to use it to create a rough route through the tech tree. And Carpet DM asked, I wonder if the Factoriopedia could hide content that isn't discovered, maybe tied to the tech tree and the same event triggers. It seems like a shame to have the wiki spoil things after all this build-up. No, Factoriopedia shows you everything. If you don't want to have any spoilers, I am going to open it now and click around in the menus. So I've just come to the one with fluids, and as you can see there are the usual set of fluids, but there's also a whole load of new fluids that you probably won't be familiar with. I'm not going to click on these to help keep the surprise, but as you can see there are a bunch of new fluids, just as there are new manufacturing buildings, new tiers of belts, tiers of inserters, new intermediates, all of the rocket related parts, all of the space platform related stuff. So all of that is new and different and is described in Factoriopedia. As you can see from the icons, there's also one that shows you about the local sort of wildlife, the local terrain, the local, vegetation. So Factoriopedia is comprehensive and there is absolutely no way of filtering it. So I'm going to click on water. I'm going to click on steam because it's relatively limited what it will show you, but you can also see that it just shows you absolutely everything from the beginning. Okay, so you know about this recipe if you've heard about Volcanus. The acid neutralization is one of the new recipes, but as you can see it tells you all about steam and nuclear power and all of that sort of stuff. So there is nothing hidden in Factoriopedia and there is no way of filtering it or anything like that, I'm afraid. Had a couple of questions about map generation. One from Jermaine who asked, how is the world generation menu set up? Is it individual for each planet? Is it shared or are they working on it? And John Lewis asked, can you set the settings per planet, or is it for all of them all at once? Jajada asks, Ray, new map gen. I think this is the first mention I've come across of there being bodies of water akin to seas now in the base map gen. I love the cargo ships mod, but I never did a proper game with it. Fiddling with 1.0s and previous map gen, I seem to only get it to place enough water for long ship lines if I give up on also having enough land for long train lines. Hopefully 2.0 Nauvis will give me seas and continents and stop forcing me to choose between them. So I did show some generated maps on the live stream that I did. I tried to avoid showing you the menus for the actual map gen because it is a little bit spoilery if you're very sensitive to that sort of thing. So what we'll do is we will hop out and we will go into the map gen and I'll show it to you properly. It has undergone several revisions, so there is a possibility that it might be revised again. Now, one of the things to note is the videos that play on the on the start screen. They are quite spoilery, so I can't avoid them being in the background. I think you can technically turn them off, but I'm not going to bother because it's a lot of faffing around. But as you can see, I have started a new map, and from the beginning, it allows you to set the resources. So this is the resources tab. It allows you to set the level of resources on each planet, and it has the usual frequency, size, and richness. Now, this actually changed because as we got, basically, we've ended up with a situation as they've evolved, Gleber and Volcanus and Folgora and Aquilo. that there's only a couple of shared resources now. Originally, there were quite a few. So, for example, Gleba had iron patches on it, copper patches on it, and I think regular oil as well. And so it had shared settings. And as you can see, coal is a Volcanus one as well as a Nauvis one. And stone is on Gleba and stone is on Nauvis. So there are shared ones, but it's ended up that there's only a couple. Crude oil is shared from those two. So what they did have is that originally you would set iron ore and it would be for every planet. You would just set one setting of... Oops. Oh, I'm accidentally changing it. You would just set one setting for... it's because it's on the scroll wheel and I'm trying to scroll. You would just set one setting for frequency, size and richness, and it would apply to every planet that had that resource on it. As you can see now, it is broken up, which I think is much better because it allows you to tailor it a bit more. One thing it also lets you do is you can preview every single planet. Okay, so we can see Volcanus, we can see Gleba, we can see Volgora, and we can see Aquilo. Okay, some of these are a bit meaningless because Aquilo, it's the C block thing. You're building your own places. What a bad seed / good seed would look like for Aquilo, I don't really know. We can flip through a few variations and it just moves things around. So yeah, that's a difficult one to judge. But some of the planets like Gleba, I could see there being a use for doing a seed. The seed is common. Okay, so every time we change the random seed, it affects every planet. Okay, so Nauvis is changed from what we had before because we've hit a few random seeds. Okay. Terrain then, again, they've now broken out the settings for every planet. Now again, because of the changes and as you'd expect, the ones at the top are pretty much just exclusive to the planets anyway. There aren't multiple different, multiple planets with water on them sort of thing. We know Volcanus is barren, we know Fulgora is barren, and Aquilo it's an ammonia sea, so it's a different sort of thing. So what we can see is that 3 of the planets with cliffs on them, you can turn the cliffs off. You cannot turn the cliffs off on Volcanus because it's an absolutely core mechanic to that game and also part of the whole Demolisher thing, baiting them round, And the whole point is it's a volcanic planet, so if there were no volcanoes on it, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be right basically. So the 3 planets where they're a bit more meh, as to whether they're there or not, you can change. The only one I would say that is really impactful is the Fulgora one, where what you're effectively doing is you're deplateauing everything. So these just become regular, edges to the things, and that allows you to just walk around much more easily. That really is cheat mode for that planet, I would say. And again, you can increase frequency and stuff. And it gets quite challenging if you put the frequency high for Fulgora because you've got the reverse situation where lots of these plateaus that you'd want to be building on, suddenly you've got loads and loads of cliffs on them, making it really tough. And unless you've been to Volcanus and got cliff explosive, that is really challenging because you've got so little space to build on, basically. As you see, we've got moisture and terrain type are only impactful on Nauvis. Okay. Next one then, enemies. Obviously, we only have enemies on Gleba and Nauvis and Volcanus. Again, you cannot turn them off on Volcanus. Okay, so this is actually a bit of a change, I think, in that because you can't even decrease them, basically. I think you can do this. I think that works. And that as well, maybe. I don't know what it does to Demolishers, if I'm totally honest. I generally always play with enemies on, so these are settings that aren't hugely familiar to me. In terms of the expansion and evolution, I think these only apply to Nauvis because, Demolishers don't evolve. They just get bigger as you go further away from the start area. Gleba enemies do evolve, so maybe that impacts them. So yeah, it's difficult to know exactly what the impacts of these are. If you're really interested in them, you may have to do a bit of searching around, do a bit of experimenting and see what happens. Starting area size still works. So if we go to, for example, Gleba, you notice there are enemies right at the edge there. If we take it right down, we've now got enemies really, really close to the start area. So that works pretty much everywhere, I believe. I wonder what it does on Volcanus. I've not looked at that, actually. It doesn't preview the... It's interesting. Because it's a territorial enemy, I don't think it has any effect, basically, on Volcanus. That's interesting. But yeah, as I say, I've not really played about with it because I generally just leave most of these at default. Whether or not these do anything, it doesn't specifically say they don't, sort of thing. So you could end up with a situation where perhaps the Demolishers will only smash your base, if they happen to go through it, and they won't then actively come and attack you. Maybe that's what peaceful means for Volcanus. I would expect, that no enemies does just get rid of them. But it doesn't say either way, sort of thing. But you certainly can't turn them down, and that would make sense, because these territorial animals, what would increasing the frequency and size mean? Bigger territories, I guess, but that's not going to be meaningful in a sense. So I do fully get why these are, still here, and you can't turn them off on Volcanus. But as I say, what these exactly mean, you may have to play around with. The advanced settings, then, you can still do ribbon worlds and all that sort of stuff. That's all still there. Technology multiplier is there. I think this used to be a mod, though. I have never done it. I know some people love it, but I think it used to be a mod or something like that. But that is still there. You can still do technology multiplier. Pollution, as you can see, you can still turn off. Asteroids, then, and spoiling. These are obviously the new settings. What these do, as it says there, is affect the sort of amount of them. So the rate at which items spoil, if you don't like that, if you think it needs to be quicker or slower, you can increase and decrease them. I will be totally honest, I don't know whether putting that up to 1,000 gives you more time or putting it down to 10 gives you more time. I would expect 10 gives you more time, that it's 10% of the rate. But it could be the other way around because of phrasing. Spawning rate, then, as it says, is the rate at which asteroids spawn. Asteroids obviously spawn around your platform and grow, so if you're looking for a little bit of an easier time, you can adjust it, or I guess turn it up again. I don't know whether 400% means a higher spawn. I would expect it to mean a higher spawn rate, but it might not do. It might mean that it's 1/400th or something like that. I don't know. But so my expectation would be that 100 represents the normal, and if you go down, so you go to a lower percentage, it's less of those. If you go to a higher percentage, then it's more. Nora asks, any super unexpected features, like for example moons or dwarf planets or big asteroids with a limited surface that can be used as a boring or mining facility? So there's nothing like moons or anything like that. The very end game, you do a lot of asteroid mining, but it does involve you physically going to the asteroids and doing mining. I'll talk more about that in a separate video, I think, because I haven't had time to write the answers to the Quillo and endgame stuff with all the problems I've had. But yes, basically, so follow-up video that I'll talk about the kind of endgame stuff and the questions you had there. And I say that is a thing, but it's not like getting out and mining, asteroids or anything like that. Yeah, so one of the biggest surprises for me was this guy, the mech suit, and seeing what that actually was with his claw arm and all that sort of stuff. But the other one was the biter capturing mechanic and how this all works. It is tricky sometimes to do, so I'm going to try and demonstrate it very quickly. But I could well end up killing the killing the nest because they're quite squishy. This is just a test game basically, so they're all very squishy and. A single shot from me could kill a nest basically. So yeah, we'll try and kill them. What I'm going to actually do is sort of take these guys away, blow them up, get rid of the worms if I can. So look, you see, it's just a single shot because it's got all buffs on it. It's got all the things. And then we'll switch to the rocket launcher, and we'll lob that over there. Okay. And then in the meantime, we will get rid of these. And you see that they're being captured, so they've got that blue bar underneath. Just trying to get rid of the individual ones. Give us something to do. You'll see on my... There we go. So you see on my hotbar here, there is bioflux, and that's what you have to feed them. We'll just put a bunch of bioflux in. They have this damage mechanic, they use the damage bar basically to show you how captured they are, because eventually they do revert back. But what you get out of them is the biter eggs, essentially. And biter eggs are a very key resource. They do spoil, So this is another item that spoils that is only available on Nauvis. And when you've seen the platforms with the biter carcasses on, that's why, because eventually when they spoil, they spawn into, as it says there, spoil result, large biter basically. So yeah, when they're in the nests, they don't spoil. That's a sort of top tip basically. So if you're wanting to, maintain a sort of a active biter creating thing for the reasons that you need it. I just realised I've got loads and loads of stuff in my inventory that is technically secrets, but I think I assume on this video, given how late it's going out, you know what's going on. But basically the other thing I did want to just show, and this was, like I say, it was a huge surprise as well when it all came in, but is the whole biolab, and this is the proper graphic for the biolab now. Okay, so this is what the biolab looks like. I was saying about making it more clear that there was really a nest in there, there was a biter. I think they've achieved that because it's got these gloopy things. And if I give it a bunch of technologies, so I've just given it one of the many infinite techs to do. That's another thing. There's a whole load of new infinite technologies. And this is the animation of it playing. And also you'll be able to hear it as well. They're all very gloopy, the things. But you don't have to feed this one, so you don't have to give it bioflux. In fact, I don't think you even can give it bioflux, can you? No, so you can't give it bioflux. But you see it has this consumption... it has a slower consumption, basically, of items. That's one of that's its main draw, as well as having 4 module slots. I'm getting prod because I say I've done... I've unlocked a whole load of researches. But as you can see, we can chug away on a research, and it's creating more science out of less science packs, basically, which is why you want it. But yes, so this is the model. It had in the mock-up, it had like a sort of a tower here. That's gone. But as I say, the captured nest bits and because it's got the gloopy, soft membrane bits, and they're now pushing out past the windows, and it looks suitably disgusting to me. But very, very clear that there is a biter nest in there, as well as these tentacle type tendrils coming out of the sides. It does look like it's really been squished into there. Very veiny as well. So, yeah, suitably disgusting bit of model. The other thing I would say is that the Demolishers are a huge surprise. I've told this story before, but the first people encountering them when they went to Volcanus on the LAN party got a real shock finding these things. This is one of the smaller ones. There are enormous ones. They're absolutely huge. But people were asking about the lava trail as well, and whether it was permanent and stuff. And as you can see, it lasts for a long time, but no, it goes away. But the cloud stays there all the time. The lava trail is there. And as you can see, it causes this to go all sparks, and partly that's the legs. It's slowing the legs down, so suddenly I'm slow. But if I also try and fly over these trees, I can't until it wears off, basically. So it's like a status effect that eventually does wear off, so long as you get out of the range. And this guy, he is really, they're completely passive. They don't do anything until you attack them or you build in their area. So if we build something in the area... So what you see there, hopefully it came across, but he sped up and went for the thing I just built. You do have to build them in the area, though. And you can see my bots are trying to replace it. There's 10 more. Yeah, so, and it does blueprint them, and you can replace things with bots and all that sort of stuff, but it has to be in the area. So if I build over here, it doesn't react. Yeah, but if you come and, so even if I build it behind him, I think, if that's in the area. I'm not actually sure that's in the area. No? Let's just go through here. No, you're not going to react to that? I think this was like the root cause. I don't know if you remember of saying that the behaviour was unclear. And it's sort of this, that it's taken ages for it to react to this being placed. Oh, also, you notice it gets rid of the cliffs. So when it just goes across cliffs. So you can bait them around and get them to destroy cliffs for you. It's a bit tedious, if I'm honest. But see, it's now gone for it again. And it does speed up when it gets closer. And I tell you, that was the type of behaviour that people were a bit sort of like, I don't understand why it's going from now and why it's just sat there ignoring it most of the time. And yeah, so I think this you know, territory sort of thing makes it a bit clearer that anything you build in here eventually it will come for. But obviously if you're right the way over the other side here, and this was the stealth mining basically, so if you come in here and you're quick enough, you know, you sort of build some big mining drills, yeah, because they're quick, you see, and you can have them, you know, blueprinted with modules in it and all that sort of stuff, and so you can get, you know, a train's worth, and you go on and you notice it's not come from yet. I mean, it's not even in the area actually. That's a terrible example because that's not its territory. Have we got anything in its territory? They try and go back to their route as well, and you can see actually I don't think there's anything in the territory. Is that a patch there? No. So yeah, you know, you could just leave this one alone. So long as you routed around the edges of its territory, it just wouldn't ever be a bother. Interesting. I've actually deleted quite a lot of them because I've been messing about with the high level weapons, seeing how that all works. But yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe there's a patch in here somewhere. I did want to show you the worms eventually turning up. There's the wormy boy. Just a small one. Is this must be in its territory? Yeah, here we go. So if you were trying to build, you know, you were trying to do some guerrilla mining, you didn't want to kill off these guys, but you didn't want to get rid of them, then, you know, we'll see how long it takes for it to come. Because it is right the way over its other side of its territory. It's right the way over there. Obviously it's not on there because the map's gone. Are you coming? No, so it's kind of ignoring us, you see. That might well be outside of its territory. There's always that problem. It's difficult to tell sometimes. I'm pretty sure it's in there. So maybe it has like an area of effect thing. Not an area of effect, like an area of concern. Because I'm sure if I build something here, it goes straight for it, you see. But when you pick it up, obviously it doesn't bother. So if you've got bots and stuff, you can stick in a bit of mining, get it done, what you want, say fill a train and off you go, sort of thing. So there's all sorts of strategies for dealing with them. But you see, it's basically ignoring these. And I'm guessing when it loops around in its territory, then it will suddenly get interested. Unless it's not your territory, is it? No? No? You happy with that? You happy here? Hello? Yeah, and you have to avoid the front end of them because they'll just kill you if you run into it. So yeah, so those were kind of the unexpected or surprising areas. So not a great deal that you kind of haven't been made aware of anyway. Professor Bits asks about the super landfill. Is the super landfill mass producible on all planets, or is it locked to a specific one? The super landfill is actually foundation, okay, and this is the recipe here, and as you can see I'm building it on Nauvis. It's not a restricted recipe, you can build it everywhere. But what you build it from is actually quite a complicated set of ingredients. So it basically requires everything from almost every planet, and that's kind of the point of all of the Aquilo techs. They give you things that are awesome and super powerful a lot of the time, but they require things from multiple planets. So it's a big test of your interplanetary logistics. So this one here requires stone, which you can get on several planets, but obviously on Nauvis. Tungsten plate is a Volcanus tech, carbon fibre is a Gleba tech, lithium is Aquilo, and so is fluoroketone. And that's the cold fluoroketone, so you've got to be chilling it basically. So as you can see, it's a very expensive thing. You don't really need a lot of it though, because you only place it, as it says there, that it can be placed on lava, oil, ocean and water. When you get to late game and you're mega basing and you're just concreting the world, then you'll need quite a lot of it. But during the most vast majority of your playthrough up to rocket launch and all, not rocket launch, end game, winning the game, etc., etc., you know, you only need bits and pieces for where you exactly want to put rails and that sort of thing. So yeah, it is very expensive and quite complicated to make. As you see, it also has a 30-second craft time. So this is not a high volume material until much later in the game. Nora asks about the bots. Are the tweaks to robots noticeable? Is the increased bandwidth of logistics bots noticeable? So there's a lot of robo speeds on this test file, because when you enable the cheats it takes it all the way up to sort of 30 or so for robot speed, so it's really difficult to show stuff, and when they're this fast it's like difficult to demonstrate the thing, because basically what I'm just requesting the iron plates into there, and this inserter is moving them around, and these bots are so quick that they're able to like beat the inserter essentially, and there's only 20 of them, so, and I say that's with it having maximum stack size, and all of those are unlocked. So demonstrating the bot thing is really difficult without setting something up. I did make a few notes though, and so I can't really show it because I would have to have a proper functioning base that has has these types of problems, where they're not charging in the right place. What I would say is they do still feel slightly dumb, the bots, and I actually found the change made them a little bit more frustrating in places. The issue essentially is that it kind of highlights some of the other shortcuts and workarounds that they've done, in that they're now, where we would see like armies of bots stood at a roboport waiting to charge, they don't do that so much, but they do sort of often sit in place waiting for a slot to appear at the roboport that they picked. And because it doesn't reprioritise redoing charging unless there's some disaster, or you remove the roboport or something like that. What I was finding is, and I reported it as a bug, and I think it was just a reflection, as I say, of it highlighting some other behaviour that they've created, which is basically that they would pick a roboport better, but if you've got lots of robots doing lots of jobs with not so many roboports, they still end up in a queue. And if they've picked a roboport because, say there's a roboport with 10 requests on it, to charge that is, and one with 4 requests on it to charge, and maybe, I don't know what it does in terms of distance, but it picks the one with 4 on it, okay, because obviously one's going to open up soon. But if the bots that are, going to that to charge are like a long way away and have run out of power, then actually they could take a lot longer to arrive than the one with 10. So I was seeing bots that were just stood there, apparently not charging, even though they were really close to a roboport, because they decided to go and charge another one, and lots of other bots that had run out of power and were, taking ages to get there, were basically holding places in the queue, and they were not reprioritising. So you'd have roboports with no bots on them, bots sat there that were waiting to charge, not going to charge at that roboport. They picked another one ages ago. There just weren't the actual slots available. So if you engineer your base, it's a bit like how, to solve the problem of them flying across ponds, or lakes rather, we would design our bases in a particular way so that you didn't have these weird paths, and you always had, whichever way around it is, convex rather than concave. You didn't ever create paths where they flew across biter areas or anything like that. And those are all the workarounds we used to get around the old problems. A lot of those old problems are gone, but there are new problems that you're still going to have to work around. Does that make sense? So, yes, they are. It is noticeably different. I don't know that it's any less frustrating, some of the problems. And you're still going to have to do workarounds. It's just you're doing workarounds for different things. Okay, so it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. And yeah, I don't expect any of that to change, because some of the things you would need to do would make it very much less performant, basically, because they would be getting them to redo the queuing and all that sort of stuff. And if you imagine it doing that for thousands and thousands of bots, it's just going to be horrible on the performance. So I don't think they'll change quite a lot of those, but it does highlight that there are other issues that still make bots something you have to work with. They're not just they are a cheat code of a solution, and they always were, and they still are. It's just that you're going to have to work around some other issues that you perhaps aren't knowing about. You don't know about, as it were, that have been. They were probably always there, but they didn't matter because of the other problems, if that makes sense. Gord's also asked about the recent steam to water ratio change. I have another one for you. With the water to steam ratio being changed to 1 to 10, while maintaining energy consumption output of machines, my initial thought was that this would change the energy output of steam engines, as each steam engine would have less energy. However, this makes no sense, as we would just need more steam engines to produce the same amount, resulting in the same amount of water consumed that we have now. Upon reflection, I now think to compensate for the 10 times steam produced per water, that they have increased the heat capacity of water to 2 kilojoules per Celsius. This would mean that the same amount of fuel is burned in the same amount of time to produce the same amount of steam, keeping the same amount of stored energy as version 1.1. Can you confirm that the heat capacity of water is now 2 kilojoules per Celsius in space age? So yes, you're absolutely right. They have increased the specific heat capacity of water to 2,000 kilojoules per degree C. So it now takes 10 times as much energy to heat water, which is obviously then compensating for the amount of steam that you get. It obviously decreases the amount of fluid flow, I think, if I'm getting my maths in my head right, because of that whole extra conversion. There's no, less water flow. I'm pretty sure when I originally wrote the answer to this, they hadn't changed it. So it was 200 joules per degree C still. And so you did get more. But yes, I might well have got very confused on that, as I do remember writing this quite a long time ago. So yes, I may well not have remembered that properly. They did always increase it to 2 kilojoules, but equally it could have been the other way around. And they realised that they changed it and changed it over. So yeah, the answer is yes, basically. But I didn't think it was yes. Nora Transpire asks, do stacked green belts make your eyes hurt? So I've come back to the pointless machine. So we'll flip them on. I mean, I find the arrows difficult to see when they're just in motion. I wouldn't say they hurt my eyes as such, but it is difficult to see the arrows because they do move so quickly. If we put something on, as it were, we switch it on, and you can see items moving around on the belt. They do just become a blur, if I'm honest. And these are obviously, because the belts are moving so fast and these are chugging along. These are stacked items as well, so I guess maybe it would feel them better if it was just using regular. In fact, let's maybe try one. So I have flipped these ones over to bulk inserters, so you can see more individual items on the belt as well as the stacked ones, but it doesn't really help in a sense. They are just a blur. Yeah, they're a bit problematic, but they're also really expensive to use. Filling your base with green belts is like very end game stuff. So at that point, you probably don't care really. But yes, I wouldn't say they hurt my eyes, but it is difficult to see items moving on green belts. Daniel Montiero asks about the beacons rework. How does the beacon rework feel? Is it enough to change the meta? So the answer is kind of yes and no. It doesn't. It's going to change the meta. Yeah, it's going to change how you build things, how many beacons you build, all that sort of stuff. It's going to really change what works in the kind of intermediate game, early game, even late game. The ultimate endpoint is going to be for the mega bases, basically the same. It's just that they're legendary versions of everything. But if we look at this rocket. I'm just putting in infinite resources sort of thing. It's requesting completely randomly a whole bunch of steel chests. But if we just let this launch, your limiting factor is still your launch speeds, but they are pretty quick now. And you'll see how this just has 3 legendary beacons with legendary speed modules on, and it's built a rocket. So that's just 3 of them. I say so with so many on it, you could probably do it faster than is worth it in a sense, because the rocket still takes a certain time to build, go up and build. So where you could surround them with beacons before and have modules, and if you have to put a lot of material in very quickly, but they weren't your limiting factor. Your limiting factor really is now the launch speed. Not that your limiting factor. That was beneficial. That worked, as it were, because it did. You sort of hit a cap of the build speed and versus the launch speed, that sort of stuff. Now it's so quick with just so few beacons, but they're legendary ones, which means they're really expensive to make and get. But as you can see, it just absolutely canes through it when it's got enough. Just a few legendary beacons on it. So yes, they are impactful. Yes, they are going to change how you do things. It really is, just stick one beacon on is just massively improving for a load of machines. But it's sort of like, a reduction in what you're doing, if you see what I mean. It's not really making it so that you want to build more and more beacons. It's more that you want to focus on quality beacons, basically. So as I say, it comes more into the later game, I would estimate, really. But I think they're a thing that can have quite a lot of impact throughout, and on platforms, a high level, high quality level beacon with high quality level efficiency modules is really going to help with your power demands, So there's all these things that are probably going to benefit from it, but you'd have to play. I think you're going to have to play quite a lot to find what are good and optimal solutions. Basically, it's one of the problems of this that I've had the expansion for a month. I've scratched only so many, a tiny proportion of the things, and there's just so much in it. I think I've already said several times that quality is basically an entire, mod, an entire overhaul mod, and that's just one thing that's been added that's completely optional. It's a really massive expansion when you really dig into it. And I know I sort of saw some forum posts on Reddit that were sort of saying disappointed in it or were expecting more and stuff like that. And it's you need to get into it and really play it to understand. Basically, there is just so much in this. And John rounds out this section asking, what is your favourite new thing in the expansion? Angry Ghost Guy, obviously. I mean, Angry Ghost Guy, obviously. That's everybody's favourite, isn't it? No, my real favourite is the map gen, if I'm honest, which everyone gets. It's universal for version 2.0 and, Space Age, and I just really, really like it. It just makes Nauvis so much more interesting and so much more fun, and makes it feel so much more like a planet. That obviously kind of extends to the other planets, but I don't have a comparator for those. So, Fulgora and stuff are presumably benefiting from the way that the map gen has been changed. But in terms of, I don't have a comparison, basically. So yeah. Nauvis is now awesome with the map gen. There's another example. So, Whacking Great Lake there, look. I don't know how far that extends. Because I was saying before about you now get really big bodies of water. And this is just at default settings, you could fiddle about with it and find a really good map for doing that and what have you. So yeah, I really love the new map gen. I think it really, really benefits the game. Your Nauvis related questions. Yo6161 asks about buildings on Nauvis. Without going to space or the new planets, are there any new buildings that you can build on Nauvis? Or are all of them locked behind the new science packs? Not really, to be honest with you. I mean, the three that are kind of shown here. So you've got obviously the hub. That is integral now. I think I've mentioned this in the live stream, but that is integral now to both versions of the game. So with and without Space Age, because now when you do, white science, space science in the normal game, it drops it to the landing hub. So that's a universal feature now, which is going to be interesting because it'll change quite a lot of things, because you're not going to have to move white science around if you put that near your, near your labs, basically. So yeah, that could make things a bit easier. But the other two buildings I would say are the selector combinator, which is this new, does the thing where it puts them in order. I haven't really used it a great deal, if I'm honest. And then the panel, and this was the one that I was moaning about because basically it's not quite what I was hoping for, essentially, when it's hooked up to conditions. So I've just set something up, very, very silly, basically. So this chest has got 100 blue circuits in it, and I've set this up with a condition to say, if you're getting a signal, it's hooked up with a red wire, of more than 100 blue circuits, then put blue circuits, 100 on the map. Now, the bit that I was, going on about that I didn't like, as it were, or what I was expecting it to do, it's not about liking it or not, is that I was expecting to be able to use that 100 blue circuits in the actual message it had, whereas it isn't. It's like a fixed thing. So if you want to say, say that this is a requested chest and you're checking how much is in it, so you would need to set up all the messages, okay? So here we've got different messages for different amounts, okay? So this is me hard coding it effectively, and that's what I didn't want. What I wanted was, automatic coding. So if I, it will respond to these things. So if I put more blue circuits in, it's now got 200 in. So it's like, you've got to have them in the right order. So initially I set this up where the 100 was above the 200, and it like evaluates them in order. So if the first one is true, then it, even though it's a smaller number, then the next one as well. So the second one is true, and maybe the third one is true. It'll only, as soon as it gets to one it's evaluated, it'll do that. So it does operate like a case statement in in that type of coding. But what I was wanting was more dynamicness in the displays. So I've had to set up this 100, 200, 300. It won't do it automatically. Yeah, so it won't put a number on there based on the signal it's getting in. And that's the type of thing I wanted, because I wanted to be able to put it on train stations and it would just automatically tell me how many trains it's ordering and that sort of thing. And you can get it to do that, but it requires you to manually set it all up. And that's quite a bit of faffing around for what I wanted to do, basically. So yeah, that was my issue. That's been my issue with it, but it's fine. It's not a problem. It's just to say, not as automated as I was hoping for. But yes, these are the 3 buildings you can build. There's the hub, which is in both versions. The selector combinator, which I believe is in both versions. I think this is coming to the base game. I don't 100% know. And then the display panel. Again, I suspect that that's coming to version 2. I don't think that's exclusive. Maybe wrong. So what I'm saying is no, I don't think there's any more been added, because I think these are being added to the base game, and so they are technically pre Other Planet Sciences, but in every version of the game. So they're not an exclusive thing to Space Age, I think. I don't know, but certainly you can build them before Planetary Sciences. A couple of questions around uranium and nuclear weapons. Peter Schmidt asks, has the new map gen with standard settings still way too much uranium? And Nora Transpire asks, will we still swim in uranium? So this one's kind of a you tell me. I never really had a problem with uranium, and the amount that it generated. I did cover this on the live stream as well, and I have already shown several map gens. So, your answer is, we've got, 3 patches in the starting area there. So a tiny one, a medium one, and a medium one, I guess. Is that too much? I don't know. What I would say is that some of the things later game do require uranium, and the difficult to get uranium. So perhaps that's a balance to it. But the big thing we were expecting to be a uranium sink, the space science in space, is that recipe has been changed. So you do not now require to put uranium or send uranium into space to get space science in space working, because that recipe is just gone, and you just make space science in space. For that's how you make it. You make it on platforms from asteroid chunks. So that uranium sink is gone. But does that mean there's too much? I don't know. So it's a difficult question for me to answer, because I never really thought there was too much. And then Nora goes on to ask, any changes to nukes or additions such as the fusion bomb? The answer is sort of yes and no. So there's no new nuclear weapons. There's no fusion bomb. There's no plutonium version of the nuclear bomb or anything like that. What there is quality. So quality, if we see here, this is a basic atomic bomb, and it does 400 damage plus 5,320 explosion, area effect size 7, damage, blah blah blah. So if you then look at the quality version, the damage now is 1,000 plus 13,000 explosion. The ones with diamonds are the things that are affected by quality. So if you're making quality atomic bombs, then you're going to get high yield, basically. That's one of the areas that I would say actually quality makes sense, because a better designed bomb is going to give you a better yield, basically. So quality is the only change really to uranium, and obviously also applies for ammo. So you can get quality ammo and therefore quality uranium ammo. My assumption, I have not done this, I really haven't touched nuclear stuff particularly, because I focus more on getting quality solar panels and stuff like that, which sort of head off the need to do Covarex and all that sort of stuff. So I haven't done a lot with uranium in the new game, but my assumption is that that comes simply by having quality modules in like Covarex and stuff like that. It will occasionally give you a quality piece of uranium, but say whether it goes through recycling and that's a good way of getting it, I don't know. But certainly it lets you build in cheat mode quality nuclear weapons, and I have seen quality ammo. I have produced quality ammo actually. Whether you can do it with uranium ammo, I don't know. But yes, the only change is really to quality. And I guess if you're talking about sinks for uranium, if there is a quality loop, you can recycle it. You want to get, quality nuclear weapons and all that sort of stuff, then that would be a pretty good sink. Just cycling it round until you get legendary bits of uranium. Thero asks about moving your base of operations away from Nauvis. So I have one question on my mind. Maybe you can touch on that. I'm wondering if Nauvis as your main production hub is a given, or whether other planets, such as Vulcanus, could take that place. Forgive me for skipping ahead, but they then wonder, so I wonder if in the end Nauvis will remain the essential anchor for your playthroughs by virtue of having virtually infinite and easy to use space, or if any other planets are realistic alternatives to it. Can you say something in that regard? What is your impression? Could you quickly transition in making Vulcanus your main planet, or will the worms just say nuh-uh to such an ambition? And Nora also asks, any plan on moving house to one of the other planets? So I don't have any particular plans to move off Nauvis. I will almost certainly build my main base there and ship things to Nauvis, certainly my very first playthrough. Biolabs cannot be built anywhere but Nauvis. They are locked to Nauvis, so that's one of the choices you need to make, because you can build normal labs anywhere, okay? You can build them on space platforms, right? So one of the things that I think people haven't really realised is there are a lot of infinite technologies now, loads of them in fact. And the way they've done them is that they don't all require everything. There is one infinite science that does require everything, and that's the end game science. And it is hugely powerful but difficult to do. Everything else, so all of the other infinite researches, I think there might be one or two, but they're more restricted in what they need. Okay, so for example, if we look at the tech tree, you will see various different coloured packs here. And what happens is that even though they get to the super duper bonkers numbers, they still only require those science packs. So for example, this one, plastic bar productivity, only requires red, green, blue, purple and the agricultural pack. Okay, so there is an argument, I would say, for having labs in space that travel around perhaps collecting some of these packs and do the, say, less useful or rarer or what have you sciences, basically. So the fact that this is the spoilage one, maybe you locate it on Glebber, and if you want to do plastic bar research, and I think there's another one that uses the agri pack, yeah, there we go. So the railgun, although that's a lot more complicated because it does use multi. It's interesting, this looks very different. But yeah, so there's an asteroid productivity, requires white science, which obviously you do in space, yeah, so you could do that in space, and then this could otherwise be done on Glebber, and you could either send the packs up or send the packs down. So I think there's an end game where you're doing infinite techs in different places. If you're like, right, I need to increase my artillery range, then your labs over on Vulcanus chug away on the next one of those. Well, that's shooting speed I've done, but they chug away on the next one of those, and then in the meantime, the one that is the infinite everything rather science pack, you're basically collecting the resources for that, because there is literally this one science at the end that uses this new black science, and that's it from what I can tell. And what it does basically is increase lab productivity. Okay, so it is hugely powerful, but it in fact affects all labs, so it improves all productivity of all labs. But yeah, everything else uses planet level science packs, and they tend to be tied to the planet related to that technology, if you see what I mean. So for example, as I say, the artillery stuff And there is a damage tech. Do you see that there? There is a damage tech for artillery shells now, for example. But that's all Volcanus locked because you unlock artillery on Volcanus, okay? And so you don't need to move spoilable, science packs around your system to do that research. Yeah, so I think there's an end game where you end up with a platform that goes around doing a lot of these sciences, and it has regular labs on it. And then when you want to do the mega difficult final end game science, you're sending out expeditions to get the stuff you need, bringing it back and just doing them when you've got them, and that's you reserve, as it were, the biolabs for doing that science maybe, and maybe the Nauvis ones, and then everywhere else you do them. So for example, mining productivity now doesn't require space science. It's just up to purple. So if you build a massive Nauvis base that can do purple science, and then you can use the biolabs, and this is hugely useful, as we know, for making everything really, really easy to fill trains and all that sort of stuff, and it affects all of your mining and pump jacks and all that sort of stuff. So it's a bit more choice-based. And this was one of the things. It's actually really great because it's what I was asking for. It's one of my big requests was having science packs that are more choice-based. Do I want to do loads and loads and loads and loads of mining productivity? Okay, well, you don't need to bother making space science. You don't need to make, the planet sciences. You just focus on the purple science. That means just Nauvis, to me, using biolabs. So if that's what I want ridiculous mining prod, then I can do that. But mega bases, and this is where the real challenge comes in, I think, in this expansion, mega bases require that everything in science pack. So they're going to be done on Nauvis, I think, because of the biolab. And the difficulty is getting the material, basically, to do those. And you could chug away on some of the other ones with local science production while you're doing that. Yeah, so it becomes a lot more choice-based to me and a lot more interesting, if I'm honest. And Daniel Montiero asks the eternal question: how big should your Nauvis base be before you venture to a new planet? Size isn't what matters, it's how you use it. I mean, so obviously this is really difficult to answer, but my kind of recommendation for your first base, when you're first playing the game through, is to make something that can make a sustained 60 science per minute, as well as the ability to make rockets at what I would describe as about the same productivity level. Obviously, rockets are a bit more focused on certain materials and stuff like that, but if you're thinking a science base that has the science capacity to do 60 science per minute-ish, and has the equivalent extra infrastructure to do that again. So take that base, kind of double it, so aim for 120 science per minute in terms of amount of plates you're producing and oil and blah, 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 blah. Although actually produce 60 science a minute and have the rest go into rocket and rocket silo production. That would be my recommendation for where you should roughly be before you want to try and go to other planets. Okay. To get there, you will need to do quite a lot of space science, and space science requires platforms, so you will be playing with the new stuff quite quickly. This base that I'm on here is the one from that I'm prepping for doing the live streams. It is already launching rockets into space. It has a platform to do space science, but yes, so we're already doing stuff. This is 10 sessions in. What would the playtime be? So I've just done a quick thing. This is 18 hours of gameplay. So after about 20 hours, and that was with me prattling on and doing my usual stuff of doing the things. So if you're just dedicating it maybe 10-15 hours, you could get going. If you're playing in multiplayer, you can certainly get to space in a day. Probably get to another planet in a day if you're doing multiplayer. But yeah, on your own, 15 or so hours maybe to get off of Nauvis initially. Another maybe 15 or so to get some platforms that can do the trip. And then you're on to properly playing with the things. Now, a big part of my reason for recommending that is because I think you should be producing everything on Nauvis that you will going to want on your other planets. So you can bootstrap them. You can just start from basically nothing, arrive there with pretty much nothing. I would recommend, as I mentioned before, about having enough stuff with you to do a landing hub, build a silo, build your first rocket so that you can get off. But you don't even need that. You can bootstrap them all. It's just, I would say that certainly doing that 3 times in a row is not going to be all that much fun. It's a lot of work and you're doing a lot of the same stuff over and over again. So my recommendation is that you have the ability to be able to send substations and to be able to send roboports and to be able to send bots, and therefore you can just order them in, and after a short journey, short time, that platform will deliver them to you and off you go, so that you're not there thinking, oh, I got to build blah blah blah. There is another alternative, which is something I've not touched at all, and I suspect might be probably how everything ends up, which is parameterization. So you can parameterize every blueprint now. Okay, and that's just that key. And obviously on this particular thing there is nothing to parameterize, but it turns things into like more generic recipes. And so I can see people putting together a little super compact, parameterized, self-setting, like build everything basically. And then maybe complex stuff you still get delivered, but like yellow belt and blue inserters and that sort of thing. It's a little thing and it makes those, and you can just stamp it down and you can set it to what you want and off you go. It makes those for you using bots. But there again, you've got to bring bots with you. You've got to have that infrastructure with you in order to do that, that particular production. So I can see parameterizing blueprints being the way to go, but I've not touched it, to be honest with you. So yeah. Professor Bits asks, how does colonizing a new planet work? How to get there by yourself, how to get stuff to it, and what would be required to request more stuff without leaving? So I'm kind of not going to fully answer this question because it is sort of the very basic stuff and it would take kind of ages to do. The sort of answer to it, to be very cheeky, is to watch my Let's Play series, and that's where I'll be going through all that, as well as the live streams. The timing of that means you won't see them before you could potentially purchase the game, but basically you use platforms. So if we go to my rocket here, in order to build a platform, you have to send the pieces up in the rocket, okay? And you have this automated request system. So when you've got an order for something on your platform, it uses this, and it's all about the logistics requests. That is how you do platforms, basically. So if we go to the platform here, and so this isn't functional, you'll see that it has this ability to go to other planets, like a train. It's very much a train schedule. It even has interrupts that you can add on, okay? And you can do trips and you can do interrupts. But you see it has the unload and load, and what it does is it's based on the logistics system. So I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but basically you set what you want it to have. So you say you want that. The problem is this base isn't really able to make rockets. It's just little. It's a little thing that I'm, because there's technologies you unlock by doing the things. So I kind of need to do the things in order to unlock the technologies, and then I can kind of make proper things. But it's like I've not got enough platform pieces being made and stuff like that. And that's what I'm saying in my other answer to the other question about how productive your base needs to be. And this is why, because you need to be able to produce rockets basically and get that whole system going to make the thing work. But yeah, basically what you do is you send platform pieces to build the platform via rockets. You then have them request items and deliver items using what is essentially a train schedule, using the logistics system. The other part to that then is travelling to space. If you want to travel to a space platform, you have to disable the automated side of it. Obviously it needs to have a rocket for you to use, which this doesn't, so isn't a very good example. But then basically you've got this travel to space platform button, and that would then put you in the platform, and you would travel up to your platform and you would be on the platform. You could then you can manually set the schedule, so you can do like a one-time trip to go to the place. You have to do that in order to discover the planet. Once you've discovered the planet, you can set up a route and have it all do the logistics requests. And when you're on the planet, you then set logistics requests, which are then you put them, match your platform to them, and your platform will just automatically go, right, need to go back to that planet to stock up, need to go to that planet to unload. So there is a bit of subtlety to it, a bit of weirdness. but you can't use like circuit networks, you can't do any of that type of thing. Everything is like independent, basically, apart from the communication for the logistics system. So that's kind of a very, very superficial and quick guide. But the real answer, as I say, is watch my Let's Play and, we'll kind of be going through it. Your questions related to space platforms. Baker Magician asks, is there an interstellar map you can physically see? I want a cute little star-speckled overlay like you see in Star Fox 64. There absolutely is a map, and this is it. I am hiding the final planet and sort of endgame and that sort of things, so to keep this a little safer. But you will see that you have all of the planets, essentially, and it shows you the distances. It is completely static. It does not have a nice star field in the background. The sun doesn't even animate, so this is just a static picture of a sun. So what it does show you is the distances, and obviously the distances affect the travel time. So Nauvis is exactly the same distance to every single other intermediate planet. However, Nauvis ships cannot go to the other places. Okay. Now you can also then have the option of going from Vulcanus to Gleba and Gleba to Falgora, which somehow are exactly the same distance as well. So every intermediate planet journey is exactly the same time/distance. Okay, the one you can't do is Vulcanus to Falgora, so you've got to route through another thing. But what I think you can see there is that there's a relatively nice set of looping trips that you can do. Okay, one loop there, loop all around. So that's the type of thing you want to be thinking of in terms of a lot of your platforms. What you'll also see is these are greyed out because we've not researched them, we've not been anywhere, but we do have a platform in orbit around Nauvis, and that's what that little symbol there is. That represents your platforms, basically. Okay, so you can instantly see where they are, what they're doing, etc., etc. But as I say, two little tricks to it. You can't go Vulcanus to Falgora, or vice versa, and you can't go Nauvis to the end planets. You can't go Vulcanus to the end planets. So there are some restrictions in the trips you can take, basically. But yes, that is the interstellar map. It is a more utilitarian thing because it's Factorio than a pretty star map type situation. Will Bates asks about getting ready. How much preparation do you need for your first exploration space platform before heading off to the first new planet? So this is kind of a similar question again. The kind of answer is the same as the previous one about how big your base needs to be. But what you need to do is, first off, oh look, we've got a rocket ready to go. We could hop on board now and I could just show you the platform. But basically you need to do one platform that will do space science, and you use that to do a whole load of technologies that you either can't get or that require space science or have space sciences to have been done. So you need to do one entire platform that does that and that it's consistently sending stuff up and down. Then you need to build a platform that is capable of getting to the planet that you want to go to, basically. That is almost certainly a trial and error thing. You can blueprint them, so you can probably in the end download blueprints for them, but it's sort of a trial and error thing of, well, how many guns do you need, and how many thrusters do you need, and how many arms do you need, and grabber arms, and how many crushers, and what do I do with the excess? I need to throw it overboard. How many places do I throw it overboard? And how big is this platform? So how much does it weigh? How many storage things do I put on it? So it's really about you deciding how you want to build that first travelling platform, and it will probably be trial and error. Now, to sort of help you with that trial and error, it will auto-save when you launch that planet to that planet. So it will basically do an auto-save when you set off, and so if you die on the journey or you get there and you realise you've not got any of the stuff you need or stuff like that, then basically you can just reload that file and give it another go, and it is very much intended for it to be trial and error. You give it a go, you see why you failed, you try again, okay, and that save file helps you out. Professor Bits asks, how many of the special buildings, foundry, EMP, big mining drill, etc., can be carried by a single rocket? So, I could go really fancy with this, but I'm just going to read you out a list. I could put up the graphics and show you and all that sort of stuff, and part of the reason, it's easier via Factoriopedia, but it's got so many spoilers in it, I want to sort of be safe. So, I'm just going to read you out a list. So for Gora buildings, we've got the recycler, 10 can go on a single rocket. The MP, 5 can go on a single rocket. You can also put 50 lightning rods and 20 lightning collectors on a rocket. Why you would want to, I don't really know, because nowhere else uses lightning, but it does let you put buildings that aren't any use anywhere else on a rocket and send them. Volcanus buildings, you can get 5 foundries on a rocket and 20 of the big mining drills. Gleba buildings, you can get 20 of the agricultural towers and 20 of the biochambers. Nauvis buildings, new ones, you can get 1 of biolabs on the rocket. Obviously all of this comes with a massive caveat that they could well do a final tweak or 2 before launch and certainly between when I wrote this list and when launch is, because I did write it a week ago or so because I was anticipating them doing the video, blah 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 blah, sob story. Obviously all of the buildings, like assemblers and regular mining drills, they all have limits as well. I'm not going to go through them because that would take us all day. The thing I would say about it, the comment I would make, is it's clearly really done for balancing. I know they talked about weight in the thing, but some of these don't make sense when you look at the sizes of the buildings and the number that you can apparently get on a rocket compared to other buildings, and it's clearly done more for balancing. It's to limit the number of certain things that you send, and to give you an easier time to send certain other buildings. So yeah, I'm sure weight is a factor, but as we saw with ammo, apparently 5 electromagnetic plants weigh the same as 50 handgun magazines. A very serious user asks, what are the throughput limits on space logistics? Can you drop down unlimited amounts of resources and also send up unlimited amounts of rockets? So, the honest truth is, I don't really know how you would measure throughput in a sense. So, I threw this platform together. It's been gathering loads and loads and loads of meteorite chunks. They all stack to 1. One meteorite chunk is basically going to be 1 cargo pod. As you can see, loads and loads and loads of these. This is, big in terms of a platform's inventory. It's got plenty of those on which are legendary, which have a size bonus when they're legendary. So these are each 50. This is a proper big scale platform. At end game, you're probably doing something, say, with quality to reduce the number of and size and all that sort of stuff. So it's absolutely chock full of asteroid chunks. Okay. Now on the planet, we then got this, which is even bigger. Yeah, and it's just got loads and loads of inventory capacity. What's that? Storage, 3,480. So a gigantic storage area. It's connected. It's part of a logistics group that is requesting loads and loads of asteroid chunks, like way more than the platform is holding. So in other words, it's suddenly going to get an infinite request type situation. Okay, so I'll switch it on and we'll see how quickly it drops all of those chunks, essentially. Okay, ready for this? Right, so I've switched it on. I'm not showing you because it'll highlight menus and stuff. And nothing's happening. Why is nothing happening? Oh, here we go. So it takes a little while for them to arrive, and then this happens. So every single one of these things, and I don't know what order it picks them in. I think it's just randomised. Every single one of these things can receive a cargo pod, basically. Okay, and if we now look at this, that's all of the chunks that we had, basically. Yeah, that was it. So that was pretty much all of the chunks being delivered in seconds. So I don't know how you measure the throughput of the system, basically. It's more dependent on what you can... I mean, what it's sending down now is what it's grabbing instantaneously, or what it had on the belts. And as you can see, it's all dropping down all at once. We now have 625 of one, 370 of another, 225 another. So we've dropped down in a matter of seconds, and these are representative of a single stack. Yeah, so we have dropped down over 1,300 stacks of material in seconds. It's like the throughput on it is bonkers, because you can't, these systems, these hubs really are like logistics, like massive combined roboport, chest type entities. And so you would be able to get at all of this with bots. And I can probably demonstrate that as well if you give me a second. So what I've set up now is a bunch of requester chests, loads and loads of requester chests. So loads of capacity in the requesting system. They are part of the logistic groups requesting those. So what we will do is we will add 50 bots to the network. And you have to remember, obviously, I say these bots have got an enormous amount of buffs on them and stuff like that. But there are going to be 50 bots added to the network, and we'll see how quickly they empty them. Because this is like the, it's difficult to answer this question because what it means is complicated. So yeah, we'll come over here, we'll add the 50 bots here. They will blast around and it will just empty it incredibly quickly. And it's all part of the same thing, because what does throughput mean? Is it getting it down to this hub, or is it getting it into your system? So there you go. So they're insanely fast, the bots. And you see it's just filling all those chests in seconds. And each one of these represents a single stack, essentially. And it's pretty much, how do you measure this as a throughput thing? Do you know what I mean? It really isn't going to be a problem getting these things in and moving things around. Your problem is on the other end, launching rockets, yeah? And that can be made incredibly cheap with some of the buffs, so you can have loads and loads and loads of rockets. And you can have huge platforms with legendary storage things in. Throughput is not limited by the hubs, basically. Do not worry about that. Worry more about getting it away from the hubs, about putting it on trains and sending it to places. So yeah, it's a really difficult... I struggle with how to even come close to answering it, and I just don't even know. If you, particularly when you add in quality, you add in all the buffs you can do to bot speed and carry capacity and everything else, your throughput is just through the roof. I don't know how to measure it. You need someone, like Dosh or something, to come up with some metrics, I think, to actually measure it. I really don't know. Lego Technic Builder asks, is dropping cargo from space free? Yeah, dropping things down from orbit is completely free. These little pods are just free, basically. They have no cost whatsoever. It can send infinite of them. You don't have to resource them. You don't have to fuel them. You don't have to power them. It's just completely free. The difficulty is in getting the stuff off. That is not free. And that is a challenge that you need to solve and you need to work through. But getting stuff off of platforms onto planets, free. Daniel Montiero asks the related question, when you first land on a new planet, how hard is it to send supplies from the ship to the surface to help you get started? Getting things down off of the platform is totally free. What I can do is switch over to the other save and show you, you don't really even need a landing hub, okay? Oh, by the way, completely apropos of nothing, the button appeared for showing pipelines. So I think the Friday Facts is preempting that a bit, because that has not been there. Yes, so this platform, because of the build requests and all sorts of stuff like that, it has 50 blue inserters. Now imagine that was anything that you wanted to bring down, okay? What you would literally do, and you've got these drop slots, yeah, is you literally shift click on them and it puts them in a drop slot, okay? You'll have seen it flying off then, I missed that. So the drop pod is coming. Oh, here we go. So it took a while for it to arrive. That's interesting. I've not seen it do that before. Take that long to do. But what it does is, obviously you have an origin point for every map, okay? And it drops it, if you don't have a landing pad, which I don't on this. Oh, that's interesting. It's landed now. They used to just float there, okay? It's interesting it took a long time, that. I wonder if there's a research to speed that up, given what we've already done. But basically that is your resources. So it's not charged you anything for them. They've not been lost, they've not been destroyed because there's no landing pad. They do drop at the origin, where you start the game, because that's where it's going to be safest, but that does mean if you're miles away, it's not there. But if there's no landing pad for them to go to, they literally come down as pods like this. And here they are, okay? And this contains the 50 that we've sent down. And this is free. This doesn't have any value, as it were. When I pick it up, it'll do this destroyed animation. They've added that. That's lovely. I love that. That's great. But yeah, so that it's not even there actually. It's just a sort of a ghost on the top basically. They're coming to pick up those inserters. But yeah, so if you want to get stuff down, you don't want to build a landing pad. You've not got a landing pad. Because landing pads can set to have specific requests, you see, and so effectively other stuff is like dumped outside. But basically, you just dump it, and it comes down to the origin, and so it's incredibly easy to get stuff off platforms. So cost-free, and you can do it manually very easily. So it was interesting. It took a long time. That I don't remember it taking that long before, and I don't know if that's a special thing for dumped items or there's a research that makes it quicker or what really. But I really love this little thing on the ground here. It's amazing the amount that they've added, particularly on a graphics front, in like the last few weeks. There's so much that was like clearly placeholder, but I didn't realise. Professor Bits asks, would it be feasible, in your opinion, to build a platform housing all of your labs that goes in circles, collecting the packs from each planet? So just to note, you don't run around like this unless you're in cheat mode. This is what you do in cheat mode. But basically, as you can see, you can build labs on platforms, and there are, as answered in the previous question, there are researches that only require certain things. So I think having variety is actually kind of an interesting way to go. The problem in the sense is the biolab. If you want everything to gain from the bonuses that gives, then it all has to come to Nauvis. But I think there's certainly a case for having platforms on multiple planets doing routes between them, and so that they can just do certain researches, and you focus them on the planetary type researches, and then you siphon some off on when you want to do a big one. I think there's a lot of scope for doing it. Whether it's the most optimum, I don't know, because, as I say, the whole biolab thing seems like the optimal way of doing science. But I don't think it's going to be so optimum that it doesn't, it makes everything else just pointless. I think there's lots of different options for doing research in the end game. Will also asks, do you have a recommended level of military science or turret quality to keep your platform alive when out of Nauvis orbit? Yeah, I think getting into territory where you've done a couple of the infinite research is probably appropriate. The thing is, you need to look at what the damage types are and what asteroids are on your route and all that type of stuff to really work out what's optimum. But then you can use basic ammo to do all of your journeys, and that's obviously far easier to produce than the other ammos. If you're doing the more complicated, longer journeys for the rest of the game, you're probably going to have to make higher level ammo, and so having even more buffs is going to help you out further there. You may also want to consider doing a few quality turrets, and as that will help you out. Because quality turrets get a further range, which means they get more time to shoot at the asteroids, and they can kill them off further out, basically. So having a couple of quality turrets, maybe not all of them, maybe you just get one or two that help you trim out the further ones. There's also a bit of a balance I found in like speed, because sort of the faster you're going, the quicker the asteroids are coming at you, basically. And so having, say, a few quality turrets will push the range back at which they can start shooting those. So, if you're getting quite fast platforms, then having quality turrets is kind of a help there. But yes, I would say a couple of infinite researches, a couple of infinite damage researches. Nord Transpire also asks, are space platform tiles expensive to make? So this one here is making platform pieces. And the recipe, as you can see, is 20 steel and 20 copper cables. Obviously, the copper cables part is trivial. I imagine those are being like bits of copper cable that are sticking together into steel. But they're not made from low density structures, is one of the things. They're not that. They are literally just 20 bits of steel and a thing. And that's one tile. So think of that in terms of that's a piece of landfill. So effectively, if you're trying to landfill an entire lake, you would need 20 pieces of steel for every single piece of landfill. Not cheap. But steel now benefits from a infinite research productivity boosting thing. So eventually they do become cheap. But space platforms are not cheap to make. And this is where I come back to you need a base that can do sort of a spare 60 science, because then you can dedicate that productivity, production, volume to producing things like space platform PCs, rocket PCs, etc., etc. So yeah, this is why I've been talking about you need good infrastructure on Nauvis. And Big E rounds out the space platform questions with, are there any tools or features still missing from the train or space platform management and scheduling systems? So I've kind of mentioned this in a few of the answers to a few of the other questions, but basically you cannot communicate with platforms using the circuit network. I think we chatted about this in the live stream one, and I think the devs were answering some of the questions a bit better than I could, but you cannot transfer like red and green signal type information between platforms or between planets. So you can't have them communicate more complicated bits of information than you can put into the logistics system. You can set up conditions and have interrupts and stuff happen based on those conditions. That's an addition. I'm pretty sure that wasn't in it when we had the LAN party. But you could have a condition going on and it does something then to make the platform do something. So that's more intended, I think, for saying, right, well, if the platform is this low on ammo, then go back home, rather than I want to make more steam, therefore I need this much amount of water, which means I need this much amount of ice. Just communicate one message and it'll do, you can't send it a steam request. Well, you could, I guess. But it's getting the information into the logistics network, because the logistic network kind of doesn't accept red and green signal information. They're two separate things, and so the platforms can't really accept red and green signals other than if they're generated locally. Personally, I think it's something that really needs adding. It was actually Nilhouse pointed it out in the very first Q&A end of day session was. And something he was trying to do, I think, in the actual day. And he was like, how do I do this? And they basically said, you can't. The reason they hadn't done it is because their perfectly reasonable point was that they'd never really tried it. They hadn't really thought about it in that way. I don't know if any of them just don't use signals to control trains sort of thing. So that, I would say, is the major thing that's missing. They did mention, I think, in the answers to the Q&A session that they're thinking about putting in for 2.1. I don't know that they're convinced. So if you really want it, then get on the forums and stuff and make a hue and cry. But yeah, I think there is the thought that maybe they would add it. I don't think they've in any way decided they're definitely putting it in. No, plutonium.